Hello everyone and welcome to the Mobile Commerce Generation, a webinar brought to you by Driving Business Online and powered by PayPal. I'm Robert Gerrish from Flying Solo and I'll be your host for today's webinar. These webinars and the Driving Business Online program are designed to help keep you informed of the trends we're observing in the e-commerce market and provide you with information to help drive your business forward and succeed in this exciting space. Today I'm joined by Paul Buchanan from PayPal, David Odgers from eBay and Jonathan Dawson from UNICEF. Welcome gents.
Morning.
During the presentation, please use the chat window on your screen to ask questions and we'll do our very best at the end to answer some of these at the close of the webinar. Now let's kick off with Paul Buchanan, Head of Mobile Business for PayPal, to bring us up to speed with Australia's hunger for all things mobile. Paul.
Hey Rob, how are you going?
Good, thank you.
Yeah, I think that in a word, the word is explosive as far as where m-commerce has got to in the last few years. And I thought I'd start with what's driving that, and that essentially really is the smartphone. And in particular in Australia, we've really developed a love affair with that smartphone.
Have we ever?
At least 52% of Australians now have a smartphone. So by smartphone, I mean essentially a phone that can easily access the internet. iPhone's a great example, and the iPhone in particular in Australia is one that's very popular, very much the most popular. About 48% of smartphones that are bought are currently iPhone devices.
Very nice for Apple.
And then on the sale, very, very nice for Apple indeed. And 2 out of 3 phones that are now being sold via the telcos or just people buying phones, 2 out of 3 are now smartphones. Typically people buy a new phone every 2 years. So what that means is we're in a sea change moment, but a very fast sea change of people moving from what we'll call feature phones or dumb phones to the smartphones, and giving us this great capability to shop whenever we want. And over 500,000 Australians are accessing the internet every day on their mobile phones, just whether that's just casual browsing, finding out information, or actually making purchases. And that is increasing, particularly when it comes to Christmas time. We watched it last year, particularly spike, and that will happen again without a doubt this year as well.
Undoubtedly.
At PayPal itself, we're concentrating now on the m-commerce side of things. We're expecting in excess of $10 billion globally to be transacted on mobile devices this year, up from $4 billion last year. And in fact, I think we'll quite comfortably beat that $10 billion target. So the story is it's explosive, it's rapid growth in this area from 2008 to 2012. So businesses it's a consumer-driven, I guess, phenomenon that's happening here. People are buying the smartphones and then realizing how good they are to shop with, and therefore m-commerce is following that. So
and you can't get on a bus without seeing a whole lot of people using them
anyway. It's people can utilize their time so much more effectively now thanks to the mobile phone. So what that has meant is that it's a consumer-driven phenomenon where merchants are actually playing catch-up with the consumer and having to look at their site from the perspective of a mobile shopper. And we've seen that happen, as I say, very quickly. Within the PayPal base itself, over 2 million of our Australian account holders have bought something on a mobile phone. Our payments in Australia grew 5 times last year. They'll grow another 3 times this year. And over 25,000 of our merchants have actually had a purchase from a mobile device. What this all basically means is that a customer can, the very first time they look at your website or your brand may actually be from a mobile device and not a desktop. And this has all happened in the last 3 or 4 years.
So a lot of people scrubbing around to get a decent mobile presence, which we'll talk about some examples a bit later.
Yeah, I essentially spend my day talking to merchants of all sizes, big end of town, right through to garage operations that are actually also doing very well or just starting off, and talking to them about their mobile strategies. The first question basically is, do you have a mobile optimized site? And I often get a blank look there, and the way to answer that is basically look at your website on a mobile.
Sure. And the example you've got there with the Rose is only a perfect example, isn't it? The difference between optimized and non-optimized.
Exactly. If the site is really hard to see, hard to navigate, just not a pleasant experience, you're pinching and scrolling to be able to see things, it's an unoptimized experience. Optimized basically means it's designed for the mobile phone. It's easy to navigate. All the buttons and pictures are nice and big, and you can find your way through to what you want. And then importantly, make that purchase as well as easy as possible.
Sure.
Which is, of course, where PayPal comes into play as frictionless payments, or as possible as we can. And thinking about the mindset of how a shopper shops on their mobile phone is quite different to the desktop experience, particularly because you've got a device that's so quite small, as opposed to being able to put a lot of things on a big screen.
Sure.
You've really
You're
got
very confined, aren't you?
Yes, you've really got to rethink how you present your inventory on such a limited device. Also, typically a mobile shopper shops in snacks on a mobile phone. It might be the commute on the bus to work in the morning, 15 minutes, half an hour, little snack sizes. So it's not like, I'm going to spend hours browsing the internet. It's quite mission specific.
Get on with it, get it bought and move on to the next thing.
Exactly right, and the mobile is the perfect device to do that. So again, think of how you're presenting your products to the customer and the headspace of that customer. Also the time of when they're looking. What we're finding in the experience of the mobile shopper, as I mentioned, it's kind of snack size. It's also commute driven. It's also first thing in the morning. People are switching their phone on, checking their emails on their phone, seeing if they've got maybe some group buying type bargains
So these are the people on the bus, on the train, hopefully not in the car.
Yeah, hopefully not, yes, yeah. And then typically that will wane when they get to work, and then pick up again lunch times when they can have another look on their phone, and then certainly once
And you're absolutely noticing these kind of peaks.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's quite different to a desktop experience, and then even a tablet experience is different again, where what we're finding is people are looking morning and evening with their tablets, so start of the day and the end of the day, possibly leaving their tablet device at home, but obviously taking their phone with them wherever they go. And the other interesting learning there too is that people are using multi-screens at once. So they could be watching TV, they see something they desire from the program they're watching, and they're quickly on their phone or tablet to
so TV in front, tablet down here.
That's exactly right. So again, it comes wherever and whenever a shopper wants to purchase. PayPal is really focused on just making it as easy as possible.
And the lesson from this for any of us in business is we should be doing the same.
Exactly right, in fact, we've optimized the PayPal experience and really pushing our merchants to optimize from the home page onwards, so that the whole experience is easy.
I know we learnt on the Driving Business Online events sort of tour some of these frightening stats about the number of people that leave at the cart stage,
at the
63%
moment,
or something. So again, having it seamless all the way through is really, really key, isn't it?
That's exactly right. And a mobile is typically an impulse-driven experience as well. You can act in real time. You don't have to remember to switch that computer on when you get home. You can go, I desire this item, or I'm curious about this item, let me look at it right now. So just working on that whole philosophy of impulse-driven, make the impulse to buy as easy as possible as well. An example of, I guess, of how not to do that is adding a lot of, asking the customer to add a lot of data.
Yes, okay.
So, putting
too much information too early in the piece?
Exactly right,
yes,
asking them to put in their credit card details, their delivery address.
Home address, grandmother's maiden name, all of those things.
And thinking again about where they are likely to be shopping. If they're on a bus and they lose their connectivity and they're in the middle of making that purchase, and you could potentially lose that sale.
So this is absolutely where Express Checkout comes in, isn't it, from PayPal, which is 3 clicks and you're there, done?
Yes. So essentially the customer can see the PayPal button when they want to purchase. They go through to the PayPal side of the purchasing process where they log in. So all the data for the financial data that is exchanged is actually held in the cloud, as we say. You log into the cloud, so none of that valuable financial data is held on the phone itself. So people often say, what happens if I lose my mobile phone? People are going to steal my data, but in fact that's not the case.
No, okay. So the message to small businesses watching this is very much get people into the transaction space as quickly and as comfortably as you possibly can.
That's right.
And ask for more information, build data later in many cases.
Exactly
right. Get the
right.
transaction, don't be one of the 63% that loses it.
Yeah, so it'll bring them in through the front door, welcome them, make it an enjoyable purchasing experience. When they find what they want, they can then move to the purchasing moment and make that purchase and move on.
And what's your general sort of observation of businesses that you're out there speaking to, the smaller end of town? do you get a sense that a lot of businesses are really charging ahead to get their mobile presence sorted and working efficiently?
To be honest, no. I think it is a game of catch-up, as I was saying, that they're catching up with their audience. So a year ago, typical mobile volumes or percentages of people visiting a merchant's website from a mobile device was anywhere between 4 to 10%. Now it's quite often 20 to 40%.
We notice it in traffic to our site. It just soared in the last sort of 12 months on
exactly
mobile
right,
devices,
So whereas 2 years ago it was a bit more of a push message from my perspective, now people are calling saying, hey, we're noticing our customer volumes just rapidly increase from mobile devices to, as I say, 20, 30, 40%. So it's really in a position of playing a little bit of catch up. So you know, that's okay. It's happened so fast, but the message really is to optimize the whole experience and explore how you can make your
business
site
ready. And of course,
mobile.
that's an awful lot about the whole driving business online program, and the information that sits there on the site is to help businesses do that. So look, thank you very much, Paul. At this stage, I think we might we'll introduce David Odgers from a little business called eBay, who's going to tell us really how you observe the changing face of shopping. So Paul, we'll come back to you in questions a little later, I'm sure. David, over to you, please.
Great, thanks. So, I mean, to start off with, I'll probably echo some of the points that Paul's already made, because I think when people talk about mobile, they often think of it as a technology advancement and think of the technicalities of it. But as much as anything, what we're seeing is that this is a very consumer-driven change. It's radically changing the way in which Australians shop, and it's a behavioural change as much as it is a technology change. In simple terms, really what the mobile does is it allows consumers to have the freedom to shop on their terms. And that's why consumers are really embracing mobile, because they're getting the utility of being able to use it in all sorts of different ways. And as Paul says, that could be disruptive, and it is disruptive for a lot of retailers, but really there's a big opportunity there, because there's an incremental amount of shopping and sales that are up for grabs there because of
I saw a lovely thing, in fact, yesterday when I was driving around on the shop front, and it said in small letters on the kind of the shop window, open 24 hours. And I thought, wow, how can a boutique be open 24 hours? But it was actually just linking to their website, which is a really smart way of getting that message across, is, as you say, the consumers can buy when they want to buy. Absolutely. We don't have to wait until the store opens.
Well, in fact, that's what the consumers are demanding more and more as well. And you kind of see it reflected in some of the numbers. So this first slide here, eBay has been fast to get into this space, but the numbers are actually pretty phenomenal when you step back and look at them. So on a global basis now, eBay businesses have had their apps downloaded over 100 million times. The main eBay marketplace app that most people will be most familiar with, that's been downloaded over 37 million times. So there's a lot of consumers with the app on their phone and using it a lot, and that sort of comes through in some of these other stats. So back in July, we said over $275 a second being spent worldwide on mobile devices.
Just hold that thought for a second.
That's
$275 a second.
That's right. So if you translate that into an hour-long webinar like this, that's about $1 million of sales that's taking place. And I think the other thing that's clear with all these mobile stats is, as soon as we come out with a mobile stat, it's almost by default out of date. The pace of change is so fast here that any stat we give is sort of, we're further ahead before we know it.
And I think it's probably just worth mentioning here for people watching, is that historically, when we thought of eBay, we think of a garage sale online. That's not eBay today, is it?
Not at all.
The vast majority of stuff that you're selling or that's being sold through eBay is new. So the environment is very different.
There are probably two misconceptions about eBay. The first is the one you're alluding to. We do have second-hand product on there. We do have auctions, but now over 80% of products sold are new, and most of them are sold at what we call a fixed price. So if we state the price, that's what you pay for it. So it's really a retail destination now. The second misconception is that eBay is a retailer. We're not. We're a platform for buyers and sellers to come together and trade. We have over 7 million consumers in Australia who come each month, and thousands of sellers who are taking the opportunity to sell to them. And mobile's a part of that offer. We're finding new customers coming a lot through mobile as well. So globally, 800,000 new customers for eBay solely through the mobile, and that's just in a 3-month period. So great volumes coming that way. We're finding that sellers are using it to check their listings when they're out and about, see how they're trading. But you can also upload your listings on mobile as well. So take a picture with the camera. Images are critically important for mobile. So you can be less than 60 seconds to list an item. So very effective that way. We've had over 100 million listings that way, and I think that the last stat was about 2.4 million listings a week now coming that way.
Wow.
So the numbers are big on a global scale, but they're big in Australia as well. I won't rattle through the stats on the slide about how fast things are selling, but every 2 seconds now there is a transaction on eBay in Australia using a mobile device of some shape or form. So again, that's a couple of thousand transactions over the course of our conversation this morning, and those are sales that are up for grabs for sellers of any shape or size.
Marvelous. Okay.
If I move to the next point is really, we can get very caught up in m-commerce or e-commerce, but really as far as the consumer is concerned, it's just shopping.
Yes. And
really what the mobile has done is, if there ever was a distinction between the offline world and the online world, mobile has really made it far less relevant than ever before. It's joining the two worlds. And the two things that are really important to understand there is, firstly, convenience. We've already talked a bit about how people can use their downtime more efficiently using mobile. But the second, which is really important, is the access to information. So you can get user reviews, expert views. You can see what else is available, not just in the vicinity, but globally. So you have the chance right up to that last moment when you hand across your credit card or your cash, or you log into your PayPal account. You've got the ability to keep checking, where am I getting a good deal? And the expectations of the modern consumer is to hunt for that deal at all times. They've essentially got much more power now than ever before.
Absolutely. I remember recently I did the reverse, unfortunately. I bought something online and then read the reviews after I bought it and realised it was not a good purchase.
So maybe some consumers are even more savvy than we are now on those sorts of things. And I think what's striking is, a colleague of mine was over from the States earlier this year, and I think we typically think of Australia as being a follower market. So we look to places like the US or maybe Europe, and whatever's happening there, well, in the next couple of years that will come here. It's a bit like a
common sort of interpretation.
That's right, a bit like a crystal ball, but mobile sort of changes the rules on that, because what this colleague of mine was saying was that versus a US consumer, actually Australian consumers are somewhat more empowered, that they import more, they're more globally savvy than most other consumers around the world, and they've really latched on to mobile and are using mobile to its fullest potential. So the challenge for merchants is to bridge that gap, to keep up with the expectation of consumers, and then to convert that into sales. So knowledge is power as far as the consumer is concerned. I think psychologically as well, any device, like I've got my iPhone's not too far away from me this morning as well, because it's such a personal device. I have photos on there, have my music on there, I use it as an alarm. It's never more than a meter or so away, and that means it's a more tactile device. We love our phones. In fact, Australians really love their phones. Yeah. There was a Google study out earlier this year that said that 23% of smartphone users would rather give up their TV than their smartphone. And the only thing that surprised me about that was that the number wasn't high. It probably is now. On the same study, 94% of people had already searched for a product or service using their smartphone. 28% had already completed the purchase, and these numbers, as I said, are going up all the time. So there's real sales out there. At the same time, I think a lot of people will say to me, look, e-commerce, it's a small proportion of the total retail market, and then mobiles are a smaller proportion than that. Given all the other things that as a merchant I have to work on, is it really worth the effort of getting involved in mobile? Which on the face of it is a very reasonable question to ask. I think that, the answer to that is that the consumer doesn't think of it in those nicely compartmentalized, I can't even say it, areas, so that they're using all of these different suites of products to find what they're looking for. And Forrester did some very interesting research in the States that said 45% of purchases are now online influenced in some shape or form. So that might be a consumer finding where the store is, or deciding exactly what it is they're going to buy, and they're taking their phones all the way up to the shelf, that they're gathering information. So if you're on mobile, you're still relevant to them right up to the final point of purchase. People will be buying products online from within the store, or they'll be online and picking up in store, or they'll be determining using all these information sources what they're going to do. So being present is really what's critical.
Sure.
If you look at sort of the different occasions, I think again Paul has touched on some of these. We have the benefit of seeing a wealth of data on days of the week and time of day, and lots of research on how people are using this. I think the underlying message is there are a number of new incremental occasions for consumers to be shopping with their mobile. So you've talked about commuting; those are often referenced as examples, or people sort of showrooming where they go into a store and they use their phone to see if they're getting the best deal. A few others that are maybe less talked about, but are just as you can see, just as incremental. So a lot of people don't have access to the web during the day, and we see a spike in traffic around lunchtimes in the working week now, when people are finding a little bit of time to get on and get with their
lunchtime splurging.
And just to what you were saying with Paul before, that's where they're very task focused. So you know, the simpler, easier the experience is, the more likely you are to get that sale.
If you've had a frustrating morning at work, there's nothing nicer than going to spend some money.
That's right. Retail therapy can be any moment of the day. And then sort of on the other end of the spectrum, couch commerce is probably more of a tablet phenomenon that we've seen. So this is really in the evenings. Typically, people are more relaxed. A lot of people will be watching TV at the same time as they have their tablet open, maybe having a conversation with their spouse. And so it's more of a browse type of experience. People are getting inspiration either from conversations they're having, or maybe something that's on the tea prompts them to search for something. So a slower, more I guess, relaxed experience. But again, new ways in which you can get closer to that inspiration moment and convert it into a sale. And then really late night shopping. So people don't have the stores aren't open, or the computer isn't on and takes too long to boot up, but it's fast to get online with a mobile as well. And we see that a lot during the early hours of Saturday and Sunday morning, and I'll leave the viewers to work out why that might be.
Yeah, okay.
But what that converts into, again, the eBay numbers are very similar to PayPal, and the shape of the chart on the right, which is Australian mobile sales, is the kind of picture that any business wants to have when they're looking at their sales. It is explosive growth, as Paul was saying. And we found that in Australia, the proportion of sales on mobile are higher in Australia than any other eBay market. Yeah. So we are the leaders. We are the most advanced nation when it comes to shopping in the mobile.
So it's a very, very fertile marketplace for anybody watching this. It's just a matter of gearing up and getting ready for it.
In fact, if we look at the numbers, we can certainly see in less than 2 years that more than half of our sales will probably come through a mobile device. So it really is continuing to skyrocket, and we don't see the end in sight for some considerable time yet. Just to touch on a couple of points around eBay itself, as I mentioned, we're a platform, we're an enabler of retail. As a large-scale business with a large amount of reach, we were able to make the choice early on to invest heavily in mobile. So there's the core set of apps across all the different types of platforms, so iPhone, iPad, Android, BlackBerry, Windows, remember BlackBerry? Yeah. All of those things are there, plus a more standard optimized mobile site. So however the consumer is looking to shop, we're there for them. Yep. From a seller point of view, that means whatever the size or scale of a seller or a merchant, they can plug in effectively to the latest in technology. We have literally hundreds of developers working on this all the time. These apps are updating at least a couple of times a year, and we're innovating in lots of different ways and optimizing that experience.
And again, I think for people watching who are developing their own sort of e-commerce platforms, we can learn a lot by watching you guys. We can see what you're up to and take some lessons from that. I think.
Well, I mean, it's not rocket science in many ways. It is about keeping it simple and customer focused, and that's really what leads to the best level of sales is making it a really easy flow. In fact, I think our mobile app works in many ways better than the online experience. And then we're sort of innovating in spaces like personalization and so forth. If you use the iPad app, you can really customize it for how you want it, and that's drawing the consumer in even more. So I'll just wrap really by sort of trying to draw it together in terms of what it means for merchants as far as we see. I mean, the first thing, hopefully it's coming through in all the discussion we're having this morning, if you want to be relevant to the consumer and if you want to gain incremental sales, then mobile has to be in some way part of your thinking, however you do it. The second thing is that if that's going to be the case, you really need to be thinking about the customer experience. So we as consumers can think about how we would use a site on a phone. We want to keep it as simple and as frictionless as it can be. And that was everything from payments. So PayPal is probably the easiest checkout to put on mobile. I'm sure Paul said it definitely is.
Yeah.
But keeping the site mobile optimized. Images are really, really important in mobile as well. It's the kind of visual medium where a picture really does tell more than 1,000 words. Yeah. And we're sort of now playing in areas like email as well. So if businesses are sending out promotional emails, making sure that works on a small screen like an iPhone is important to understand too. And then the final point I'd say is it can be a little daunting. It is fast moving, technology is changing all the time. If you're a small business, you can use platforms like eBay as a way of giving a bit of a leg up and
to test and trial and get used to
and
selling and dealing with customers as well.
That's right. Let other people do the heavy lifting and concentrate on your business and delivering the service component. The fast delivery, the great customer service that consumers are also expecting.
Great stuff. Look, thank you very much for your presentation. Again, we'll be opening up for questions as we get near to the end. So waiting patiently in the wings is Jonathan Dawson from UNICEF, who's going to tell us how they've dramatically increased charity donations through innovation in the mobile space. So hello to you, Jonathan.
Hello, Robert. Thank you for that. Yes, so I look after the digital marketing channels at UNICEF Australia. And over recent years, mobile has become an increasingly important area for us. Just to give you a quick bit of background on what UNICEF do, because people have often heard of the name but don't fully appreciate what's involved at UNICEF. We work in over 190 countries across the world to protect and promote the rights of children. So we work with everything from governments to local communities to enact change around everything from health and nutrition through to education programs, HIV prevention, a lot of different areas. What we also do is respond to over 250 emergencies every year, many of which never hit the headlines. However, back in 2010, there was a big emergency in Pakistan, as some people may remember.
Floods.
Basically the floods, yeah. So an area of Pakistan the size of New South Wales was inundated after the monsoon rains. Over 20 million people in Pakistan were affected. An enormous emergency situation, people displaced, missing food, not having access to clean drinking water. 20 million people, yeah, absolutely massive. And you can see here on the picture the children cooking over an open fire at one of the displacement camps that was set up. So UNICEF needed to respond to the emergency and raise as much money as we could to help change things in the field. So what we did, we partnered with ABC Local Radio. Really lucky, they ran a big national radio appeal in Australia to try and bring it to the Australian public's attention and to encourage people to donate. The results of the appeal were absolutely fantastic. People were really generous. We had just under $4 million worth of donations. The phones were ringing off the hook for about 2 weeks. We were directing people online in particular, just because it's such an efficient way to process donations and to give people more information on what's happening. One thing we didn't do too well, as you can see from the slide that's on the screen at the moment, is the mobile side of things. Okay. So we had massive spikes.
You didn't really have a mobile presence?
We didn't at all, yeah. So you'd hit the UNICEF site and you'd see a giant UNICEF logo with no clear call to action to donate or access to any other information. You had to pinch and scroll and move things around. So yeah, not a
pleasant experience.
Not at all, not at all. So we did see huge spikes in traffic to the website. About 40% of that was from mobile devices, which is above what we'd normally see. I think because people were listening to the radio, hearing the call to action, getting the urgency and just jumping on their mobile phone, ready to make a donation, which is fantastic. Yeah. The main site, or the standard desktop site, where people are using a computer to access the site, converted people at a rate of about 10% to make a donation. Whereas the people using mobile devices that were coming to this site that wasn't particularly user-friendly converted at about 2%. Okay.
Just too frustrating, but one would imagine a lot of people then jump to a phone or find some other way.
Perhaps, hopefully, but I imagine we also lost some donations as well, because people may just forget they're in the moment there and then, and we just weren't making it easy. And we saw a bounce rate of over 80% from people using mobile devices,
frustrating for you.
Which, very frustrating. So we knew from there on in that we needed to do something about it and get a mobile site off the ground. So being a not-for-profit, funding is always an issue. We didn't have the money to go out straight away and get a mobile site developed. But what happened last year, 2011, there was the emergency in East Africa, which was caused by three main areas: huge droughts, a lack of food, and the ongoing conflict in Somalia. Just over 13 million people were affected this time. And again, UNICEF needed to go out there and run a huge campaign to get the public's attention and get them interested in donating. The problem was we still didn't have a mobile site, and we were launching this campaign within a week.
I'm still trying to, as you're speaking, trying to get my head around an organisation that, usually in our businesses we have projects and we kind of have timelines. You don't have anything like that. I mean, you must have it on aspects of your business, but when an emergency hits, it hits.
Exactly.
You've got to react.
Yeah, there's certain things we can plan for, but things like this just come up out of the blue. And the mobile site was definitely on the agenda, but this kind of forced us to take action now. Right. And it was such a good job that it did. So
you had literally 1 week to have a mobile presence created for you to accept the kind of traffic that you were anticipating.
Yeah, that's right.
You did it.
We did, yeah. And I'll talk you through kind of the thinking behind how we went about it. So first of all, we looked at the opportunity cost of not having a mobile presence. Now, based on the Pakistan appeal that we'd run the year before, and the difference in conversion rates, the number of visitors to the site, assuming they didn't go to the phone and make the donation, we would have lost potentially over $100,000 in donations. So it's a huge impact. So the business case around mobile for us was pretty straightforward.
Yes, it wasn't a hard sell to anybody.
Not at all. So the ROI was easy to forecast. We had a lot of discussions around mobile web versus mobile app.
Yeah.
And again, that was quite an easy one for us. We didn't have any mobile web presence. An app would have been dependent on the device that people are using. Because the market's changing so much and there's all these new devices coming up. Why would they download an app to donate anyway? Let's just get the website fixed, figure out how people are using our mobile site.
Can I just ask you, is that a thinking that's continued? Is it still of your opinion that in your instance that a mobile site is far superior in your case than having a mobile app, or are you
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the key thing, and I think both Paul and David made this point, it's about making it simple for people to shop, or in this case donate. And the jumping on a mobile site is the simplest way to do it. If they had to go away and download an app, we'd have to, for a start, an app is much more expensive to develop, and then you've got to deal with all the different platforms that are out there and forever changing. No problem. So we wanted to limit what we were doing on the mobile site as well, really simplify it, so the equivalent of minimising the inventory that we were showing people, just show people the here and now, the East Africa appeal. So there was one option, donate now, really simple, not masses of information to get lost in. It was a really smooth journey.
They've already had the information before they get to you.
Yeah, precisely. So they know they want to make a donation, hopefully. We integrated with PayPal Express Checkout, which again worked really well. We just had a 3-step process to donate, which is fantastic. And then we now need to kind of build on the success that we had with the initial mobile launch. So moving on to the results before we cover that. So the radio and TV appeal that we ran for East Africa was an enormous success again.
Again with ABC?
No, it was across different channels. So lots of media coverage, both online and offline. But generally in emergency, we do get a lot of coverage. It's fantastic. So lots of different media outlets. The mobile site was launched on time, which was fantastic, and we really simplified things because we had two options. We could either develop our existing site into a mobile site, which would take time because we had an infrastructure in place already that needed to be changed, and we had to work around things that were already built. So what we did, we set up a separate CMS. In some ways not ideal, but it helped us meet that timescale of 1 week to get it live. And I'll go into more detail in that in a second. The bounce rate dropped from 80% without the mobile site to less than 25%.
Fantastic.
And conversion during peaks of the campaign from people using mobile devices from the 2% we'd seen at Pakistan went up to highs of 20, 30%, which is fantastic. And we don't normally see conversion rates at that level. I think any business would dream to have that consistently, but the fact that we were out there in the media and people were coming, like you say, ready to donate, I think is the reason why we see those huge conversion numbers.
Terrific.
So just to kind of show some background in our the traffic we've seen from mobile over the years, from 2010, we saw 2% of overall traffic from mobile devices, through to this year where we're up towards 10%, which is great. So we've got that continuing focus on how do we build a site.
Have you dared to forecast what it might be in a year's time?
Who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah.
There'll be more though, a lot more.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, you can see from the numbers there that it's doubling. And I think some businesses are seeing much higher rates than that, and I think it depends on the promotional mix that you're using as to where people are coming from. But still, we see enormous revenues coming from people who are donating via mobiles, which is great.
Yep.
And a challenge we've got around this area is that UNICEF has such a mass of information and resources, so everything from the advocacy side of what we do, so people lobbying members of parliament to take action, through to financial donations, through to provision of news and PR. So for us, it's how do we make sure people can access the content they're looking for, but still keep people focused when they're coming in without drowning them in information. Yep. So that's one of the key challenges. What the first edition of the mobile site did was allow us to build a case for further development on mobile. So we went from having just a one appeal to being able to plug in other appeals, because obviously we've got a lot of different stuff going on at any one time. There's regular campaign activity, as we call it, so maybe appeals around raising money for water and sanitation projects, and then at any time an emergency could crop up, as we said. So the phase 2 of the mobile site was basically bringing everything into a single content management system, making it really easy.
So now much more than just a place for people to transact and donate. It's now rich with information, and people can spend more time on there comfortably.
It's still very much transaction focused for the time being, purely because of that. We do have so much information. The concern is if we bring everything that we've got into the mobile environment, people will just get lost. So what we do is we still allow people to access the other areas of the site if they come in through search, but at the moment it's not mobile friendly. So we've got a program in place to transition areas of the site across to mobile, but we will always have a mobile homepage that focuses on two or three core campaigns.
Excellent. Okay, that's pretty well your story, I think.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Very, very powerful one that really shows us how mobile can transform a business. And I guess again, just being mindful of our audience, number of small businesses. I think there's, guys, I don't know if either of you got comments on what you observed from that, but I think that this issue of as a small business, do I shift everything over to mobile or do I move little bits over? I think what we're learning here is have the key things moved across. I mean, I know transactions obviously are very key, and that's the focus of what we're talking about today. But do you notice that yourselves as you go out and see small businesses, how they're coping with that sort of shift?
Yeah, I think the first thing to do as a small business is talk to your developer or your platform provider and just see what they can provide for mobile. Many of the technologies now, the shopping carts and the platforms are rolling out their own mobile strategies. So the first thing I would do is sit down with your dev guy and just say, hey, what can you offer me with mobile? And quite often, if it's not here right now, it's within the next quarter or so, you'll find your platform will have a mobile strategy coming. So it shouldn't be too radical in what you have to do. It's essentially optimizing what you've got for a mobile experience. It's
to start thinking in those kind of ways, isn't it? Your mindset graph, I think, gave us
exactly. Simplicity is the key. Don't clutter. Don't expect. The don't is to don't just grab your desktop site and crunch it into a small screen. It won't work.
It's not going to work. No. Okay. Well, look. Thank you all. At this stage, what I think we might do in the time we've got there, let's move to some questions. I know that we've had a number coming in during the course of the webinar. So, first one, I think we have David. This is aimed at you. Are you seeing businesses starting to do special offers or sales at high mobile times, like lunchtime? So you said that there are these peaks. Are you seeing kind of businesses that are therefore responding to that?
It's a great question. I'm glad to be first up. Look, I think you see a number of business models that are very sales focused. So group buying in recent times has been an obvious one. So group together and get a great price. Flash sales, shopping clubs, all these sort of things that they're about creating that need to buy now. I'm sort of racking my brains. I don't think there are many sites that are specifically designed around the time, but I think individual sellers can think about playing, testing and learning, and seeing if their product is going to be well associated with some of these occasions. Well, try for a while, sort of dipping the price down for a few hours. Maybe use that as a promotion that says, we're going to do a lunchtime special. I mean, you can transition a lot of the old world retail ideas onto these platforms, and then just try and make the most of the behaviour that we know exists in the
it's kind of the online equivalent of the person who's standing outside a restaurant with little samples. It's having that kind of. I remember we met. Sorry, I can tell you're itching to say something as well. We met a business on the driving business online tour down in Adelaide a few weeks ago, and there was a guy there who runs a business selling lots of components for remote control planes and boats. Fascinating business, 18,000 odd parts on his website, and he launches a new product every Thursday. So this is not so much mobile, but it's just the whole changing face, I guess, of e-commerce. So every Thursday he launches a new product, and his followers, whether they're on Facebook or just people that follow his business anyway, there's a peak, there's a spike rather, every Thursday, transactionally, just interest in the business. Great idea. Paul, you're itching to say something.
Yeah, we're certainly seeing it in that group buying sector as well. Actually, going back to the percentages, at least 40% of some of those companies like Catch the Day are coming from, have a mobile audience of the size of 40%. But because of the ubiquity of mobile, we've got them at all times. If you can farm your database, let's say, and you are a small cafe, you've bought smoked ham at the start of the week, you've got to Friday and you've still got a lot of smoked ham left and you want to get rid of it, here's this opportunity now that you can communicate to your database and say 50% off smoked ham sandwiches today. And we're starting to see that, certainly at the early phases, but more and more of that reactive marketing, because it's so direct to the consumer. You can target them when you know they're out and shopping, looking for lunch. You hit them with that special offer, and they can react straight away. Yeah,
fantastic. Now we've got a question from Janice. This is for all of us. All of you, I should say. Do people buy more on smartphones or with iPads? What's the kind of mix there?
I can take that first.
Okay, go.
I mean, the answer is they buy more from iPads than they do from iPhones, but I think it's mainly an evolution thing. Right. So
does that? Can I just ask? Sorry to stop you. Does that mean they buy more as in each transaction is greater, or there's more frequency of purchases through an iPad?
So I think it's a little, gosh, I'm not too sure on the frequency. It's maybe fairly similar, but I think you find that the first adopters of things like iPads and tablets tend to be higher income demographics, so they tend to spend more, and then it sort of flows on through. So I think we've seen a normalization across these different platforms as more people adopt them, and it becomes more of a mass market thing. Then it averages out. In the early days, people were buying more on iPads than they were on iPhones. I think the only other thing to sort of your question there is the way in which you use a tablet is a little different to a smartphone. It's less task focused. It's more of a browsing experience. Sure. So potentially there's a chance to get people in more of a relaxed mood and buying more.
And I suppose they're going through as you say, the review process and selection, whereas maybe the smartphone is more, I know what I want, I'll get it. Yeah. Do you notice anything yourself on?
We see similar things. So one area that we do see a difference is we offer a range of gifts that convert substantially better if someone's using an iPad, because the checkout process we've got involves personalisation of certain elements of the gifts. Right. So I think it's when people have got the time to sit there on their iPad, it's much better presented on an iPad, so we see much better conversion on the gifts.
And I guess what we're going to see, those smartphone screens getting a little bigger and mini iPads and all sorts, so it's kind of big changing feast, isn't it? Okay, another one, David, you again. What does the future look like for eBay Australia? I've seen Watch with eBay available in the US. This person says, is it coming here? So Watch with eBay, I think you had a slide that
we didn't quite get into that.
Of it. No,
Watch with eBay is an iPad app that's only in the US at the moment. It's back to that idea of couch commerce that I was talking about. So lots of tablet users who are sitting on their sofas in the evening watching TV, and they've got the two screens on the go. Really, Watch with eBay is a way of connecting the two up. So If you tell it which station you're watching, I think ultimately it will be connected through the cable box. It starts to show relevant merchandise for what you're watching. So if you're watching a sports game, your sports team's merchandise is there for you to flick through. If you flick across to a soap opera, then the outfits of the characters coming on will sort of appear there as well.
Delightfully terrifying.
Yeah, so if we talk about, shop when inspiration strikes, it's really trying to condense that gap between you thinking, oh, I'd like to get a whatever, and being able to transact with it. So that will undoubtedly come here. The broader question of what more for eBay Australia, I think it's more of the same. It's really building ourselves as that platform for buyers and sellers, the retail destination. And I think in terms of mobile technology, we'll see more around what they call augmented reality. So using the phone on a camera to be able to take a picture of an object or a color or a pattern and then start searching that way without having to type anything in, but just going from I like that to, okay, here are some options for me to buy.
Wow, amazing, isn't it? Reminds me of Drinking with Dallas was a party we used to have many years ago when Dallas was on and Sue Ellen had a drink. Everyone in the party had a drink. As Sue Ellen deteriorated, so did the parties. Anyway, enough of my life. Now, one for you, Jonathan. You did your projects on a tight budget because you're a not-for-profit, we're assuming. What tips can you give us about doing things on a budget when it comes to moving into mobile?
Sure. I think the key thing that we had to do when we were looking at moving into mobile was keeping focus. So prioritising the elements that we wanted to present in a mobile-friendly way. In this case, it was really easy for us because it was an emergency appeal. But one thing we want to do as well, now we've got version 2 of the mobile site up and running, we want to look at the other content that people are browsing and try to prioritise the areas of our site, which is absolutely massive, which areas we're going to pull into to mobile-friendly content first. So really having that prioritisation of which areas you're going to work on first, I think was the key thing. And other areas as well, if you're developing a site from scratch, I think things like responsive design are a really good way to start with things, but bearing in mind that you need to have responsive design when you're catering for different screen sizes.
Can you explain that term a little for our
Sure, yeah. So it's where it's basically building from mobile up, so you're starting off with the small screen sizes to begin with. And then as your screen size increases through larger mobile devices, iPads to a desktop PC, you can adjust the layout of the screen dynamically, hide and reveal key bits of information as the screen size increases. So if you're starting from scratch, that's a key way to go, and I'd definitely advise people to think about that and talk to it with their designers.
Terrific, thank you. Okay, let's move another one for the panel. It was a point actually that you raised, Jonathan, in your presentation as well. How do we make that decision, kind of mobile websites versus mobile apps? Again, imagine small business watching this. Do I, apps very sexy? Should I have an app? Should I have a mobile site? Help. How do we make that decision?
I would say always start with a mobile website, and then if you've got the budget, then continue into the app world. And the reason I say that is, it's the same as with a desktop really. Someone's inspired to find an item and look for an item. Typically you'll go to a search engine, be it Google or whatever, you'll put that item in, you'll search for it, and you'll get a list of possible websites to visit. So if you imagine that from your mobile device, you're going to click on one of those links, it's going to take you to the mobile web.
Yes, it's not going to take you to an app.
That's right, whereas an app, really the call to action would be download our app and then start shopping on it. So it's kind of a two-layered approach. So certainly start with the mobile web, and then depending on what you're selling, you might want to include an app in that experience. But if you're selling straightforward inventory where you've got a list of items that you want to sell, you probably don't need an app. It's more that curated experience where you're leveraging the capabilities of the phone itself, the geolocation and camera and things like that. But I would certainly say start with the mobile web.
Okay, and David, you might have a slightly different view in that what's in your business, I guess, getting apps on people's phones is something that you're very keen to do. But do you have an observation again for?
Yes, I think we have the benefit of scale, but a lot of small businesses clearly don't. I think I read there's now over 500 million apps in the Apple App Store, so standing out in the crowd is really hard to do. And I think I also saw some data. It's probably a year old or so now that 25% of apps that are downloaded are only used once, and only another 25% are used more than 10 times. So if you're going to invest behind an app, you've got to be pretty clear that there's a reason for it. Consumers are going to adopt it and use it, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Now, what have we got? Another question. As eBay sellers, do we need to optimize our eBay listing for mobile devices? So there you go. So I guess this is firmly at you again, David. As eBay sellers, do we need to optimize our eBay listing for mobile?
So the answer to that is both yes and no.
Right.
So your listing will automatically be optimized for mobile across all those different platforms. Yeah. But the reason I don't just say a flat yes, it's optimized is what really helps is a large number of images and good quality to those images. So if you're thinking mobile and you're using eBay, the best advice I can give is make sure that you've got as many quality images as possible. Good pixel size, nice white background, really clear, clean, crisp. That's going to work well on these mobile devices, and that will help to lift the quality of your listing. Other than that, the work's done for you.
Yeah, okay. And presumably keep your descriptions, sharp and tight and easy for people to digest.
I mean, I guess the advice in the main is really much as it is for the desktop. The best quality listings are going to make the best impact on a consumer.
Okay. Now then, we're moving on to our last question. Our time is almost up, sadly. Now this is aimed at you, Paul. Do we need to review our website layout to suit mobile phone viewing? This comes from Cozy from Australia Healthy Choice. So do we need to review our website layout to suit mobile phone viewing?
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do.
As simple as that, really.
Please expand briefly.
It comes down to the limitation of the screen size. And in many ways, this is a good thing. Because of the limitations of that size, you can't fill it up with lots of text. As David said before, picture paints 1,000 words. It's about being almost graphical in your style and looking at a visual hierarchy. And by that I don't mean just putting things at the top and going down. It's some words can be bigger, some can be coloured differently. So thinking about what's the most important messages that I want to get to the customer's eyeballs straight up and make that the strongest attractive thing on that small screen, and then working your way through. So absolutely yes, you have to rethink your presentation on a small screen to a desktop.
Yeah, but again, I guess one of the most powerful ways that as small businesses we can do that is dive into this world a lot, look at what other people are doing, learn from the big end of town. Look at what you're doing. With
probably won't get it right the first time, but the thing is jump in and start to iterate as you go along, learn. Your customers hopefully can feed some of that back to you as well, and version 2, 3, 4, you'll get it better and better.
Yes, okay. Any observations either of you guys on the same topic? Jonathan, you're finding, I mean, I guess yours happened very quickly. You would have, well, you've already said you did a lot of work to kind of minimise what you have on there.
Yeah, and I think the numbers speak for themselves as well. We definitely had to go down that route of minimising the amount of content we display. And indeed now with version 2 of the mobile site, we set up appeals, which are in effect, like products. And we have 2 versions of content. We have a more elaborate version for people viewing desktop devices, so it's split into different fields in the back end of our system. Whereas for mobile devices, it'll pull through more of the summary information, just the core details of the campaign, just so people aren't overwhelmed with masses of information. So we very much do customise it for mobile devices.
Okay, well look, thank you so much all of you. So look, as we near the close of today's Mobile Commerce Generation webinar, I'd like to thank Paul, David and Jonathan for joining us. But more importantly, I'd like to thank you for giving up your time to be with us. A recording of this webinar will be up on the Driving Business Online website over the next few days, probably early next week, where it will join a host of terrific resources for those wishing to thrive online. And the DBO forums, the Driving Business Online forums, will be running on Flying Solo for those seeking to discuss issues and opportunities with fellow Australian small businesses. So thank you again for joining us and enjoy the rest of your day.